welcome back to Fandom Sage Powers, where we discuss comics and heroes and a little of this, a little of that. We are examining some of Krakoa's inner workings, Krakoa being the sovereign nation established by mutants, namely Charles Xavier, Magneto, and secretly Moira McTaggart. This plan came together decades prior when Moira McTaggart, who was unbeknownst to be a reincarnating mutant, came to Charles Xavier, revealing her 9 previous lifetimes and how every attempt at having peaceful coexistence between mutants and humans failed. Together with Magneto, the three devised a plan in order to establish Krakoa as a sovereign nation exclusively for mutants. In these early years, the groundwork was laid to set up the systems that would later be vital for Krakoan society. First, Doug Ramsey, aka Cypher, was taken to Krakoa, the living island which is also a mutant. Cypher was tasked with learning Krakoa's language and communicating with Krakoa, establishing an alphabet and whole written language, in fact. Soon after, Sage and Forge were brought to the island to help with the infrastructure, including the Krakoan gates and the pharmaceuticals made from the Krakoan flowers. Forge was also tasked with upgrading Cerebro, expanding the device's storage to house every mutant psyche as Charles would scan them, and creating 4 extra backup cradles. Against Moira's wishes, Charles and Magneto included Sinister in this plan. Sinister was tasked with creating a database containing the genetic material for every mutant. Emma Frost was approached and propositioned with using their vast resources with the Hellfire Club to form a company focused on shipping and distribution of the Krakoan drugs. When the time came, Krakoan plants were planted in varying locations around the Earth that quickly grew into gateways. These gates could only be entered by those with an active X gene. Charles Xavier, sending out a telepathic message around the globe, announced that Krakoa was a safe place for mutants, and for those who wished, they could enter the gate and claim citizenship there, regardless of past deeds or legal status within human governments. Xavier and Magneto leveraged the Krakoan pharmaceuticals that could extend life, cure all ailments, including mental illnesses, in order to establish Krakoa as a sovereign nation recognized by the nations of the world, essentially bribing and blackmailing their way to a membership within the United Nations. Summer, autumn, winter, spring. This is the first gathering of the newly formed Quiet Council of Krakoa. As everyone settles into their seats, Charles says, "Douglas, when you're ready." Cypher tells Krakoa, "Release the hounds." Krakoa drops Sabretooth out of a bubble of water. Kurt says, "So it appears our first bit of business is the oldest kind on this planet. Judgment." Sabretooth is pissed. He wants to know what's going on. Magneto says that they are establishing a new nation and he would have one with laws, not laws of man, but laws established by mutants. Charles says, "I cannot say that everyone here best represents the ideals of what any society should be based on, but be that as it may, it falls on us to establish the laws of this land." Senator thinks Xavier is talking about him, but he doesn't care. Exodus says, "Speak to him again at his own peril." Clearly, he still does not like Sinister. Sinister says, "A suggestion, mutant on mutant violence, killing a mutant should be against the law, and we should throw Sabretooth in mutant jail." Apocalypse says, "How can it be a crime to kill someone who cannot be killed? How will anyone, any of you, know that you are fit and worthy if you are not tested?" Storm says, "Are you serious?" Jean says, "Oh, I'm sure he's serious, but if we're arguing about the highest ideals, if the goal is greatness and purpose, and if our undertaking is to have worth, then the opposite, I think, would be true. The highest crime should be killing someone who can't be resurrected. It would be a mutant killing a human." Mystique asks, "What if they come for us?" Which they will. Are we not supposed to defend ourselves with everything we can? Magneto says the old argument, if it's done in self-defense of a nation, is not what we're talking about, and we will deal with that at some point, of course. But Jean is right. Sabretooth says, "Oh, I see how it is. You're going to make an example out of me. Well, that goes both ways, meat. I'm going to cut you up into little tiny pieces. Emma stops him and tells him to be quiet, but he still tries to fight through her telepathic influence. Little pieces and eat. Jean joins in. Quiet. Both telepaths together. Have him drooling. Sinister says, I have to say, it's the drool that really brings the whole outfit together. This is fun. What's next? Somebody shock me. Shaw brings up taxes and commerce and property. Cypher chimes in to be careful about claiming property living on Krakoa because Krakoa is a person, not a thing. Exodus says he has a good point, and this place is Eden to us, life-giving and nurturing. If any place is sacrosanct, this place is. There's honor to be had in lifting it up. Mystique chimes in, saying, before we're done, we have yet to hear from the righteous among us. And she looks over across the way at her son, saying, surely the mutant who has faith in one greater than you, Charles, has something foundational to share. Tell us, Kurt, where is your foolish providence in all this? Where is your God's wisdom? Nightcrawler sits silently, thinks, and then says, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. Isn't it obvious, Raven? We need to make more mutants. I love that Nightcrawler is the one that suggests more mutants need to go half on a baby with somebody. I love that for him. And with that, they turn to deal with Sabretooth, saying they're establishing something new. There are laws in place and we have to set an example. Magneto says, I gave you strict instructions when I sent you on your mission and you did not listen. You made your bed, Creed. Let your sleeping in it serve a higher purpose. Apocalypse agrees. Autumn has spoken. Sinister says, so long, pack light, safe travels to faraway lands. Exodus says, guilty. Mystique says, just get this over with. Winter has spoken. Nightcrawler says, it shames me, but I agree. Jean says with hesitation, yes. And Storm says, this is a sentence long past due. Summer has spoken. And finally, Emma says, oh, absolutely. And Shaw says, I don't care. Fine, yes. And Spring has spoken. Sabretooth tries to attack them. Cypher tells Krakoa it's time to open up a window, and Krakoa binds him, dragging him down into the pit. And that he is gone for now. This is a decision that they will come to regret later on. As he's dragged down, Charles tells him he is exiled and returns to his seat, saying this is the business of running a nation. It's distasteful, I know. As he dismisses everybody, he still says, I pray we never get used to it, that we never grow cold from it, that we never learn to love it. I love this section to see the X-Men party and just living their best lives, to see them happy. And dancing around the fire. We see Banshee and Siren and Dazzler. Banshee gives her the signal to juice it up. She runs up and powers up Allison so she can make a really big light show. You see Iceman freezing up Archangel's drink, Beast laughing. See Exodus telling the little kids a story. You see Sinister watching from the corner. I didn't even notice that the first time I read it. And we see old wounds have been mended. It's a good time in Krakoa. With mutants flooding into the island daily, it was time to set up the government of their sovereign nation of Krakoa. This ruling body would be known as the Quiet Council, one of the many systems that were planned out decades before. The council would consist of 4 separate factions represented by the 4 seasons, and each season would be comprised of 3 members. The Autumn faction was comprised of 3 traditional leader figures in the mutant kind, which would be Charles Xavier, Magneto, and Apocalypse. Spring was led by the heads of Hellfire, Emma Frost and Sebastian Shaw, and the 3rd seat was eventually given to Kate Pryde, and she was made Red Queen of the Hellfire Trading Company, Her task was to sneak into countries that were still persecuting mutants. By sailing to different countries, they were able to figure out how the mutants in those countries were treated. Representation was given to the criminal element on the island and the Winter faction, being led by Mr. Sinister, Exodus, and Mystique. And representing the Summer faction were the Righteous and Just, led by Storm, Jean Grey, and Nightcrawler. Also, taking 2 more seats were Krakoa, the island itself, and Cypher. 4 field leaders were nominated to become great captains: Cyclops, Gorgon, Bishop, and Magic, with Cyclops being the highest of these, being the High Commander. These great captains have complete and utter authority on the battlefield during wartime, and they were Krakoa's primary defense force. Another highly important organization that was founded was the intelligence agency, complemented by a special ops team, granted with the sanction to kill, and this was X-Force, which was overseen by Beast. Dr. Henry McCoy primarily analyzed data as well, being fed to him through key mutants upholding the logistics and systems of the island. Primarily Sage, whose brain works like a computer and works diligently to regulate transit through the gates and many other functions. Trinary, who is a technopath, controls many external systems and electronics all over the island. Black Tom Cassidy, whose mutant powers of chlorokinesis allow him to send his consciousness throughout the island, merging with vegetation, thus becoming the ultimate security system. And lastly, Forge, utilizing his techno-intuitive abilities to create incredible new weapons, scientific processes, and more. In their inaugural meeting in the Grove, the Quiet Council drafted a set of initial laws for Krakoa. The first was make more mutants in order to increase the mutant population. The second law, made more urgent by Sabretooth's actions, was to murder no man. And the last was to respect the sacred land of Krakoa as a way to preserve their home and their environment. Although these laws had not been in place at the time Sabretooth killed, he was still sentenced to the pit of exile, tainting the council's first official judgment. Perhaps the most crucial system that had been planned were the resurrection protocols. This idea was conceived decades before even any of its members had been born, to use mutant circuits, or mutants using their powers in tandem, to bring back the dead. Charles and Moira deliberately sought out to have powerful mutant children, which resulted in Proteus and Legion, with Proteus going on to become a crucial part of the resurrection protocols. The other mutants involved would be Fabio Medina. The mutant previously known as Goldballs could project golden, shiny orbs of varying sizes and expel them at high speed from his body. Unbeknownst to him, these golden spheres were actually unfertilized eggs. Now going by codename Egg, he provides the medium in which the husk will be grown. Genetic material from the mutant to be resurrected is then introduced to the egg, and this material comes from Mr. Sinister's database. The next 2 mutants involved in the protocols are Proteus, who uses his reality-altering power in order to make the egg viable, while Omega-level mutant Elixir catalyzes cellular division, in essence jump-starting life. While this is happening, Eva Bell, the mutant known as Tempest, uses her temporal powers in order to accelerate the maturation process. Lastly, Hope Summers acts as an anchor, linking them together and boosting their collective power in order to achieve the impossible. Xavier, using the advanced cerebral cradle, accesses the compendium of mutant psyches in order to overwrite the lost mutant psionic imprint. After a telepathic download of whatever memories were lost in the hours leading up to their death, the process is complete. Xavier makes sure to keep certain elements of this process separate. The 5 do not have access to the cradle, nor do they have access to the genetic material, and they must rely on an outside telepath in order to download into the resurrected mutant. Mutants deemed too dangerous were not considered for resurrection. Precogs were not considered for resurrection at the behest of Moira, who secretly lives on the island unbeknownst to almost everyone. In order to avoid multiple versions of one mutant running around, when a mutant dies, it has to be verified by retrieving the body or by investigation by the newly formed X-Factor investigation team. Over time, the Five would gain a lot of power and prominence on the island as they were looked at as sacred and to be protected at all costs. They would even eventually gain autonomy, acting to resurrect without the Council's consent, such as breaking the rule that no clones be resurrected when they chose to resurrect Scout. They also had planned to bring back the Scarlet Witch, but before they could, she resurrected herself. The Five were also tricked by Mystique, who posed as Charles Xavier in order to resurrect her lover, Destiny. This was Moira's greatest fear, as Destiny was a powerful precog and would be able to see enough to expose her. So, to get ahead of this, Moira revealed herself to Emma Frost in hopes of gaining her support. This plan, however, backfired, with Emma feeling betrayed. This turn of events would be the beginning of the end for the Quiet Council, as one by one, more and more secrets are uncovered, crushing the fragile trust that had been built of the Quiet Council. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe and share as well. I'll see you on the next video.